Alright, hello everybody. Going to be getting started in just another minute or two here. Okay. Here we go. One more thing here. Check this preview. Okay. Hopefully the sound is good. If you're checking it out and I'm too loud or too quiet or something, feel free to let me know in the chat. But we can go ahead and get started. First, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. So, my name is Tim. I go by foamyguy most places online. This is going to be a stream talking about CircuitPython development. So CircuitPython is a version of Python that runs on tiny computers called microcontrollers. Here is one right here. This is a Adafruit PyPortal. So this one is nice because it has a built-in screen. It also has some sensors and neopixels and other things that you can play with. Primarily what we're going to be looking at today is the screen, and what you'll find if you tune in to my streams regularly is that I do work a fair amount on display.io. It's one of the things that I kind of am drawn to most in the CircuitPython world, so I do tend to work on that a lot, and therefore it's a reoccurring theme in my streams. But one of these days we will branch out a little bit. We'll do some other stuff as well. But it's not going to be today. Today we are still going to be looking at display.io stuff. So CircuitPython, again, just a version of Python. It runs on these little computers called microcontrollers. So this is a CircuitPython script that's running on this PyPortal here that's drawing all these little text labels. It can do all kinds of other stuff, like with electronic circuits and things. You can plug in sensors, you can have lights and speakers and all kinds of interesting stuff. And it's really nice because it's really quick to iterate, so if you're trying to prove out an idea, you can do so generally pretty quickly and easily with CircuitPython. And the other major thing that's really nice about it is that it's heavily aimed at new users. So there's a lot of time and effort goes into trying to make the experience as good as it can be for people who have no prior experience with programming and electronics. Which is a really cool thing. So yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about. Specifically, we're going to be doing a little bit of development around the CircuitPython libraries. The libraries add extra features to CircuitPython, so they're all written in Python, and they give you the ability to do stuff kind of above and beyond what's in the core code of CircuitPython. So today we're going to be looking at a couple libraries that do different things with display.io. The funding for CircuitPython comes primarily from a company called Adafruit. You can see their logo there on the PyPortal. They're a hardware and software company based out of New York. They sell hardware typically, so they sell microcontrollers and all kinds of sensors and breakouts and other things. They're not paying me for this stream, but they have paid me for guides and other software, things like that from time to time. And I'm definitely consider myself, a big supporter of Adafruit, and I think, if you want to see CircuitPython succeed, if you want to see, CircuitPython do well, and you want to see more content like this from, myself and people like me, one way you can help do that is by supporting Adafruit by purchasing hardware from adafruit.com. Okay. I think that's it for the housekeeping. Let's see. Somebody says good morning. Let's see, is that Jose? How's it going, Jose? Still haven't got the Discord thing fixed. I don't know. One of these days I will talk to the rest of the team about a potential fix on that, but for now we'll push on. Introductions are done. Let's look at what we are going to see today. Let me start with something I didn't pull up, which is the cookie cutter library. Cookie cutter, Adafruit, GitHub. Let's start like that. So this is something I was working on last night, and I figured it would make a good thing to start off the stream with, because I have a library in mind that I've been meaning to publish for a while, and this will give me kind of a chance to not only do that, which I've been meaning to do, but also test out some of the work that I was doing last night, as well as give me a chance to talk to you guys about the cookie cutter a little bit and what it is and what it does. Okay. Sorry, one of my previews was paused and I got confused there for a minute. I thought maybe I was sitting here talking on mute. That's good though. So cookie cutter, if you're new to CircuitPython and maybe like larger project development, cookie cutter is an interesting thing. It's basically a tool that lets you kind of configure a wizard, like a software wizard that's going to ask you a bunch of questions, and then you fill out the questions, and when you're done, it will generate a project for you. So it will generate all of the sort of like boilerplate files that go into a project. And in this case, it's it's specifically set up for CircuitPython projects. So it generates all the things that are needed within CircuitPython libraries in the repos. There's all kinds of things that are not just the code itself, like documentation files, license files, readmes, things like that, configuration for the documentation, configuration for pre-commit and pylint and some of these other tools that we use. So there's actually kind of a lot of files that you need even just to create a pretty much empty library, and cookie cutter will create all those files for you based on the answers to you filling in the wizard. So to fill in the gap a little bit further, the work that has been done recently, if I pull up the recent PRs here, this is the wrong one actually though, because this came from a really old PR. So let's see, we might have to scroll back a little bit. Fix, here it is, RFC different target bundles. So this has been in the works for a little while. Summersoft started it off here back in the summer, and then it waited for a little while. Some different things about the way the libraries work, got changed in the meantime. So like we started using pre-commit, we changed versions of Black, we have reuse now. So there's a couple other tools in the mix, and it needed to get some new changes to get brought up to the current standards of what we use in all the libraries. And so more recently, starting about a couple weeks back, Ask Patrick W., another community member, picked this up and started working on the required changes to get it ready to go so that we could merge it. And he, Ask Patrick W. did a ton of great work on this, so huge shout out there. Thank you very much for doing this work. It's going to make my life easier, because I like to make these libraries for the community bundle. So that's what this was all about, is it makes it easier to make your libraries for the community bundle, because previously this tool was set up to create libraries for Adafruit specifically. And so anytime Adafruit published a new library, which is pretty frequent, because there's lots and lots of CircuitPython libraries, they're publishing new ones all the time, they would use this tool to create those libraries. And you could always kind of use it for the community bundle. It would work, but you would just have to run it, and then you would have to kind of go back and change some things after the fact. And now, though, it's a lot better. There's questions, which you'll see. I'm going to run through it here in a minute. Maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but there's questions in there for like which bundle you want to use, and a bunch of other stuff that will help us preset all the things we need to tell it, that we're not actually Adafruit, that we're going to be, publishing under our own name in the community bundle. And so it's gotten a lot easier to do that now. So Ask Patrick W. did all the work there. He picked it up recently, I should say. Summersoft started this off, and definitely deserves a lot of thanks as well. Ask Patrick W. picked it up more recently and has finished it off, and it turned out great. So last night, I've been working closely with Ask Patrick W. and Kattni on this, and last night it was finalized, and I had some time to work on it, so we got it merged, and I also updated the guide, the Learn Guide. So let's go pull that up real quick. Learn Guide, CircuitPython, sharing a library. Let's try that'll probably get us there. Yeah. So creating, and it's specifically, it's on this one page here, creating a library. It's talking about, you know, getting started with your coding, and there's this section right here, cookie cutter. And so this is the guide page I updated last night, and we wanted to make sure that when we updated the cookie cutter that we also update the guide, because you know, what you'll see is it makes it a lot easier to create all these files for you, but it is still kind of tedious. You kind of have to go along and answer each question one at a time. And you know, even if you've done it before, the easiest way to do it is kind of pull up the guide and kind of go back and forth. And you can look in here. This tells you kind of an overview of all the different files it will generate. And then down a little bit further, it has a list of all the prompts right here, which is really nice because they all go in the same order, so you can kind of plan ahead and you know what to expect before you even run it. So this is all updated now, and we're going to use the new version of it to create a new repository for one of my libraries that I made a little while ago, but I never actually created a proper repository for it. It is published up on GitHub, and it has an open source license and everything, but it does not have any of the rest of the boilerplate files that are typically found in those CircuitPython libraries. So we're going to use the new cookie cutter, generate a new repository for it, and then get it pushed so that it's got all these great things that come along with the CircuitPython libraries. What we will do after that, I'll just show real briefly, is we will look into a wrapping thing on displaytext. So one of the other things, you know, I do a lot of work on display.io, and specifically on displaytext is one of the libraries I work on a lot as well, specifically, or individually, I should say. And what we will do after we get done with the cookie cutter thing is come back and work on this adding wrap by pixels function. So I put this in a little while ago. It's actually a function that Jeff Epler wrote. So, you know, thanks to Jeff for writing the initial version of this. I moved it into the displaytext library, and then just the other day, KMatch98 tried this out and gave lots of good feedback of things we want to try to address. So some things we need to just put some documentation around, and some other things that I'd like to try to fix. So this is what we'll do after taking a look at the cookie cutter. Let's check back on the chat. How's it going, Johnny? How are you today? Thanks for tuning in. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, so to start off with, let me pull up the guide, because again, I've run this tool a bunch of times, and still every time I run it, here's the way I do it: is I come back to this guide page, and I get to this section right here that says prompts, and then right above it here there is some code that we need, a terminal command that we need to run the cookie cutter. So if you've never seen this before, then you'll see how to do this. If you want to make your own libraries, you can make use of the cookie cutter. It makes it a lot easier, especially if you want to go on to share your library in the community bundle. You don't have to. You can create a library with this and just publish it on GitHub, and just kind of keep it to yourself, or publish it however you want. But if you do intend to go with the community bundle, it will help you out a lot, because you'll have all the stuff you need ready to go. And so the command to run it is pretty straightforward. You do have to install it, so I've already done this. You won't see me do it on the stream, but I did take care of it previously. It's pretty straightforward, just a pip install right there, pip install cookie cutter. And then the command to run it is also pretty straightforward. You just run cookie cutter, and then this is like a target that tells it, I guess, like what configuration to use. And so this is saying, go to GitHub and find this repository right here. So the repository owner is Adafruit, and the name of the repository is cookie cutter CircuitPython right there. And it's telling cookie cutter to go and grab this repository and use all the configurations in it to build that wizard of all the prompts. So why don't we just go ahead and dive in. I'll show you this first, and then once we get the boilerplate created, I will also spend a little bit of time talking about the library itself that I'm going to be putting into it, and we'll look at what it does and some of the example code and stuff. But I want to talk about the cookie cutter first, because that's been on my mind, just because I worked on that last night, so it's nice and fresh. So I'm going to copy this command. Let's just create a new terminal window. Ordinarily, I would probably do this just from like inside PyCharm, because there's a terminal in there, but you can do it inside any terminal, so I'll just spawn a new window here. I'm going to go to the repository directory where I want to put this, which for me it happens to be inside this folder repos and inside this folder CircuitPython. And I'm going to run that command. So I had it copied, so I'm just going to go ahead and paste it, cookie cutter, gh Adafruit cookie cutter CircuitPython there. We will hit enter. It's going to ask me, you know, hey, I already downloaded this thing previously. Is it okay to delete it and re-download it, or do you just want me to use the one that you already had? And so it doesn't take very long to download, so I always just let it go ahead and re-download it. So you can see in the square brackets there, the default is yes. So I just went ahead and clicked enter without typing anything, which, you know, indicates that it's going to use the default value, which in this case is yes. So it will delete that stuff and re-download it. And then right away here we see the first question, which is jumping right into the new stuff. So this is the primary thing that got added, which is the first question now says, what is your target bundle? Do you want to go to the real Adafruit library bundle, the main one, or do you want to go to the community bundle? And so in my case, it's a private, you know, like it's my own personal project. It's not going to be Adafruit funded or supported or anything. So I'm going to choose community bundle by typing in a 2 there. GitHub user is going to be me, so that's foamyguy. Author name is also going to be me, so I'll put Tim Cox, that's my name. Company, so I don't have a company, this will just be a personal thing, so I'm just going to put the same as my username right here, foamyguy. Library name, so this is where it's going to get a little interesting. I'll take a quick peek at the library, and then I'll talk about the name for a minute. So the actual library that we're going to be doing is this one right here, which is called foamyguy CircuitPython display layouts, but it's totally unrelated to the Adafruit CircuitPython display IO layouts, which is a brand new library that just got started. And while this one is totally different, there are some things that kind of worked the same and were kind of meant for the same reason. But I think what I'm going to do is on this library, which is my personal project, I think I'm going to kind of reshift the focus a little bit. So it originally had kind of 2 purposes. One of them was to take JSON layout code like this. This is some JSON code that defines a CircuitPython interface layout. And again, we'll dive a little bit deeper into this stuff a little while later. But I just want to, you know, set the scene for kind of where I'm at with what the name is going to be on this. So this is one of the focuses here. It takes JSON code like this, it will parse it, and it will turn it into a CircuitPython interface, which can then be shown, you know, via display.io. Hey K-Match, how's it going? So there's some sample code here that shows how to read the JSON, how to, you know, load it up into one of these, what I was calling layouts, and then display it on the screen. So that was kind of one focus, and then the second focus was containing some of the actual layout classes that do some sort of, you know, automated stuff to move your widgets around for you and arrange them in interesting ways without you having to, you know, really micromanage like the X and Y coordinates and all that sort of stuff. So this one here was called linear layout. It would lay out things in a line, you know, either a horizontal row across there or a vertical line, you know, one on top of the other. And so, you know, this gives you an idea of kind of the second, you know, sort of type of thing that this library was focused on was going to be holding some of these layouts. But we now have display.io layouts library, and I think that's a much more appropriate spot for this stuff. So I think what I'm going to do is kind of pivot the focus of this library, not so much having those actual like widgets, those layout widgets in here anymore. Those will get moved over to the actual display.io layouts library, the Adafruit one. And this library will instead kind of just focus on this idea of the JSON, what I'm going to call inflating. So this is terminology that I stole from Android. This is kind of a pretty typical way that you make your layouts in Android. I will say it's XML code instead of JSON in Android, but the idea is exactly the same. You build your layout in a file like this that just contains the layout, and then in the Android world you would have Java code that would like render that layout and hook up to the buttons and hook up to the text and do all the stuff you need to do. And so really what I was trying to achieve here was like bring in that experience of the mobile development of like, put all your layout code in one file and then in your actual program file just kind of render it, tell it what to do, and only really hook up to the things that you actually care about, right? So like if you have a button and you want to know when it's pressed, you want to be able to get access to that kind of information. But if you have a label that is just putting like a little Fahrenheit symbol or something next to a temperature, like you don't necessarily need to bother with that in your code. If you put that inside your layout, you can just have it there. You set how you want it to look and where it goes and all that stuff, and then in your Python code you don't have to worry about it, which will keep your core logic a little bit smaller because it doesn't have to get intermixed with all of the layout stuff. So anyway, that was a fairly long-winded introduction. Again, we will dive in a little bit deeper, so if this is interesting to you, we will take a closer look at it and actually use it some little while later after we get the repo created. But I did want to kind of set the stage a little bit while it's prompting me for the name here, because what I am going to do is choose a new name for it. I'm going to choose, I think, I'm going to put the word inflator in the name to really focus on the idea that it's going to be about inflating these display.io widgets or layouts. So let me take a look back here at the Learn Guide and let's just see what it says about the library name, because it's really nice to kind of go back and forth here and just see what this says, because there are some of the prompts that you want to fill in, using certain rules and stuff. So what this says here, it's the shortest name for the library. Usually it's going to be a chip name, if it's for a device driver or something like that, it's going to be the chip name. And it should not have any of the prefixes on it at all. So it should not have Adafruit in it, it should not have CircuitPython in it. It should be just the very end part of the repo name. So I think what I'm going to name my new library is going to be, I think I'm going to call it display.io inflator. Maybe display.io JSON inflator, but I do think eventually we could support things that aren't JSON. Realistically, XML would be a better choice than JSON, but we don't have an XML parser yet, which is why I went with JSON. Yeah, I don't think I want to include JSON in the name just in case we get different formats eventually. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go display.io because that matches. I think that matches the new library, display.io layouts library. CircuitPython maybe. It's going to be harder to find, I think. It's probably near the top of my list. I don't know why I try to make this harder on myself sometimes. Sometimes I think it's going to be easier to search, but it's really not. I should just look for stuff. Yeah, so capital D for display and then capital I-O. So let's match that, and I'm going to call it display.io inflator. And I'll probably end up having to refactor the code a little bit because I want to make reference to this new name in the objects. Like right now, there's no object called inflator and there's no method called inflate or anything like that. So I'll probably refactor it some to use that terminology kind of throughout the rest of the library as well. So anyway, though, the next prompt here is for library description. If we switch back to the Learn Guide, you can see there it just says, write a sentence describing the purpose of the library. So we will do just that. This library consumes JSON. I'm going to say JSON layout code, and renders it to display.io display.io objects to display.io. Yeah, we could just go with display.io objects. I think we can come back and change this after the fact if we want somewhere, but consumes JSON layout code, renders it, I'll say renders it as display.io objects. Okay, it doesn't let me go back in this thing, which is not so bad, I guess, but renders it as display.io objects. So we'll do that. There's a longer description maybe that we could put in the README or something like that. This one, though, we want to keep it pretty short. The keywords, we'll add a few of them. Let's look in the Learn Guide what it says about them. So, you know, this is going to be the keywords for PyPy. So I am eventually going to publish this to PyPy. I don't know if I probably won't go through all of that process today on the stream. But I will get it done, and these are the keywords for it, and it does include a few of them automatically, so like Adafruit, Blinka, CircuitPython, MicroPython, a couple of those get included automatically. We will include a few more like display.io, layout, GUI, could use inflator, but I don't know if that's a very widely used term necessarily. It is, you know, it's a term that's used in Android, which is a big part of my background, but I don't know how widely it's used outside of that. So I don't know if that would make a good keyword or not. I think I'll just leave it with that. Display.io, layout, GUI. That's pretty good. Maybe rendering? I don't know. We probably don't need it. Okay. Library prefix, that's the next one. So this says used to prefix the code to an organization when creating the library. To the organization who is creating the library. So for example, Adafruit supported libraries should say Adafruit here. And importantly, you should not have any dashes or underscores or anything like that. So we just want to put the prefix and nothing else. And so for me, I'm going to use a prefix of foamyguy. That way my library will come out as foamyguy, CircuitPython, and then the name of it, which was display.io inflator. So I'll go foamyguy. I think the first letter will get capitalized automatically, I believe. So I'll leave it like that. Adafruit PID, this is another one of the new prompts. So, you know, a bunch of these prompts, they did change order, and I updated the order in the guide, so the guide matches the new order. So a bunch of them changed the order, but a few of them are new, like the target bundle is new, and this is another one of the new ones, PID. So you can put the Adafruit product ID number, which is usually like a 4-digit code, I think. Adafruit.com, if we find a product. Whoops. Come on, here we go, Adafruit.com. I'll just show you what this number is here. So if we find any product, at the top in the URL here, at the very end of it, has this number right here, 2488. It's also listed over here, product ID. That's the Adafruit product ID number, and you can put it in to this prompt in the cookie cutter, and it will automatically link the product page into either the README or the docs page somewhere. I think it's maybe the docs index page. I'm not 100% sure where it ends up. There might even be a few places, but it didn't used to prompt for this, and there always was a to-do. So like what you'll see after I run this is that there's a bunch of to-dos that it generates where it's like, okay, hey, now that you've done this, you actually need to go back and, like, you know, update this based on whether or not it does this thing, and update this part based on if it uses any products or whatever. So it was a to-do after the fact that you always had to do. Now you get a little bit of help because you can put it in here. In the case of my library, though, display.io inflator, there's not really a single product that it goes with. The closest thing would be probably like a PyPortal or any display, I guess. But we don't necessarily need to do that because it's not focused on one single hardware. This would be like if you were writing a driver, you know, for a specific sensor or something, right? Like, well, let's find a specific sensor, I guess. Here we go. This is some kind of light sensor. Like if you were writing the driver library for this device, you know, then you would definitely go ahead and grab the product ID number there and put it in here, because that, you know, that driver is really only meant to use with one specific product like that. So in our case, though, we're going to leave it blank, so we'll just hit enter. Does it require bus device? No, the library by itself does not require bus device. So if you're going to use a display which is connected with SPI, chances are some part of that might be using bus device, especially if it's not a built-in display. If it's built in, then I think it's probably getting handled in the core, and it might not be using bus display. I'm not sure, or I mean bus device. In my case, though, at this library level, it's definitely not going to need to interact directly with SPI or I2C or anything like that. So we do not need a bus device, so I'm just going to leave that blank. Do we need register? That kind of goes along with bus devices for reading and writing registers of individual registers within a chip. We don't need that same kind of thing. We're not going to be working that low level, so I'm going to leave it blank. Do we have any other requirements? We do, but it's complicated. So, the point of the display.io inflator is to grab that JSON code and render it as display.io objects, which means that it does kind of require those objects. Like if you want to put a display text label in your GUI, then you still have to have the display text label library. This is not a replacement for it. It just gives you a way to kind of declare it and inflate it and get it into an object form. So, theoretically, I guess we could list like all the different display.io libraries here, like display text, display progress bar, display shapes, image load. Probably forgetting some. Button. Maybe I said button. I don't know. We could list those, but they're kind of optional. Like if you have a layout that only uses labels, then label is the only one you need. You don't have to have shapes or image load or anything else. So it kind of depends on your own project. So I think I'm going to leave that one blank just because it's not really set in stone for the whole library. So leave it blank. Do I want to release it on PyPy? So I am going to say yes, bearing in mind that I don't actually have the project created on PyPy yet, so some part of the actions might fail if I do this, but I do want to release it on PyPy eventually, so I'm going to go ahead and choose yes here. And then do I want to do Sphynx documentations? Yeah, I think I do want to do that as well. So Sphynx docs, that's like the docs that end up on, like read the docs pages, basically. Like, well, it looks like the layouts library, it looks like, is not set up yet. Let me grab, let's look at the display text library real quick. Display text. And they have this badge right here, docs. You can click on that. It takes you to a read the docs page. And this page gets basically generated by a tool called Sphynx. There's a part of the repository. If we look at, this is the display text repository, there's this folder inside of it called docs, and inside of there's a configuration Python file, and then there's a bunch of static files and different things. And what happens is when you check this in, one of the actions rules, one of the things that gets automatically run is running this Sphynx tool to build the documentation. It builds it based on all of the doc strings that are in the actual Python code. So, in our Python code, we have stuff like up here, all these parameters listed and stuff like that. Sphynx will actually go and read all this stuff and turn it into those read the docs pages like this one here. So that's really cool, and I do think I want to have that for this library. Again, though, I haven't actually created an entry for it in read the docs or anything like that yet, so this might cause something to fail if it tries to upload to there. I'm not sure, but I'm going to go ahead and choose yes on it. Okay, and this is the last one. It just asks, what do we want to use for the default branch? We can use either master or main, and I think pretty much all the new libraries moving forward are using main, so I'm going to go ahead and do that as well. So I'll put 2 for main, and then you see there we're done running that command now, so all of that stuff is done, and we should now have a new folder that has that name. So if we said something like cd foamyguy CircuitPython display.io inflator right there, we can go inside of it, and then we can look at the files. And we see that the cookie cutter created all these different files for us. So let's get that open in PyCharm. Let me go, I'll go to this cookie cutter. We don't really need that one, so I'll open from here. This is going to be under F, foamyguy, display.io inflator. This window. Okay. So you can see here, there's quite a few files that got generated, which is why it's really nice to have this cookie cutter to do all this stuff for you. So I am going to do a few things. I won't spend a whole lot of time on it. I'm going to basically just do a few things and migrate in the code and then show you the examples of how this thing works, and then I'll probably move on after that. So couple of the to-do items that you would have to do right after you create your library in order to get it ready to pass actions is going to be go ahead and go into the README file and look. Basically, there's going to be a couple of to-dos that we want to handle. So we're just going to take a quick stroll through the README. Here's the first one we see. It says to-do. Remove the above note if the PyPy version will be available at the time of release. So I'm going to remove the to-do, but I am going to leave that note because, again, I haven't created an entry on PyPy yet, so I don't think it's going to just go up there yet. I'm going to have to do something still for that. So whenever I get that taken care of, then I'll come back and remove this note, but I do want to remove the to-do right now because we are handling it for now. Pip install. One thing maybe that we could change eventually would be changing the prefix right here that gets generated in this file. Because it looks like it does still default back to the Adafruit prefix. So I'll go ahead and update that. And I'll try to remember to make an issue for that. I didn't notice that back when I was testing it before. So this is kind of one of the things I figured it'd be really good to go ahead and use this to create my library, just to get some more testing in. So this is one of the things I will circle back and make a issue is when they choose community bundle and they choose a different prefix, we could maybe render that into the README. That being said, I actually don't know how complicated cookie cutter is, so that might be a difficult thing to do as well, and if so, then it's not so bad to have to swap them here. But basically we're just going to swap those names over. Here's another to do. So it says add a quick simple example. It and other examples should live inside the examples folder right there, and there should also be a docs/examples.rst. Which is going to be one of the files that, again, it's going to get rendered into the display, into the read the docs. So for that one, we, do I want to leave that? Yeah, I'm going to leave that one for now because we're going to copy the code in a minute, and then I'll come back and I'll put the most basic example in there. Yeah, so I'll come back to that one. I think there's a couple maybe in here in this index. So this is inside docs and it's index.rst. Yeah, here's a to-do. Add any learn guide links if there are some. If not, then simply delete this to-do and leave the talk tree. Leave this thing above it. Leave that for later. So there's no learn guides for this right now, so I'm just going to delete the to-do like it says. Related products right here. So this is another spot where you can list the related products. So if I had filled in a number, it might get listed here. But I left it blank, so there's nothing. But there is a to-do, and kind of the same rationale though. We're not going to have any products specific to this, so I'm going to delete that. That's going to be the library repository URL. So that looks good. CircuitPython documentation, the forums, Discord chat, all those links look good. And then these things will, I think, pull in the other files. So like it will generate the index file, generate the search. I don't know exactly how it works. It's something to do with the Sphynx tool, I think, what these things will pull in. Okay, I think I got all the to-dos though in here. Maybe check examples. Okay, there's no to do here. Maybe API. I don't think there's any in here. Nah, none in there. Okay. Whoa, cat's going crazy here. Alright, I got all the to-dos taken care of, except for this one in the README. So let's go ahead and get the code brought in. Oh, it looks like, let me check the chat here real quick. Do find it impressive how foamyguy. Yeah, I get better. I'm getting better over time. Sometimes I get off track, and run down the rabbit hole a little bit, but in some ways, actually, it helps to be able to talk through, especially when you're talking through problems and stuff. It helps to be able to talk it out loud a little bit. Let's see, what is over in the CircuitPython room? Got pinged a little bit. Ask Patrick W. Yeah. Well, I guess I don't know if Ask Patrick W is watching. It's picking up the tag though. It could see here. Let me show my work here a little bit. So I'm just talking to Ask Patrick W here in the CircuitPython room. It could see the tag, but it didn't think it was the latest, since the number was smaller. Ended up making a small typo fix change and then getting a new release, and it got it fixed. Okay. Should I have pinged him? That was only a minute ago. I'll probably check back. Or I could have used the reply. I'm bad about using the reply thing. That's a new feature, relatively new in Discord. It's made it a lot easier, but I haven't gotten quite used to using it all the way yet. So Ask Patrick W was asking me about something that went on with the displaytext library. So, yeah, well, yeah, I'll take a quick detour here. I don't want to get too far lost down the other road, but this might be an interesting story for some of you. So on the displaytext library, we recently had a couple of really nice improvements. So let me pull those up. Those are pull requests. They're closed now because they got merged. And it was this one, update scale, and this one, update scale. Okay, so I'm going to try to do the name better this time. I did it during the CircuitPython meeting, and I definitely was just reading it for the first time. It probably turned out terrible, but I think it's Les Samurai Pourpay, which I think is maybe French for Purple Samurai. This person's really cool. Whoever you are, if you're watching, you're awesome. Thank you very much. If you're not watching, that's cool. Hopefully everybody who is watching knows now this person is awesome. They fixed a bug in the display text label that was causing it to get scaled extra in Blinka Display.io. So oftentimes when I'm working on display text, even on this stream and stuff, you might hear me say something like, oh, let's switch over to the PyPortal just because there's this one known bug in Blinka Display.io and we want to make sure that that's not affecting whatever we're looking at. I've said that a few different times when working on a few different things. This person came and figured out a way to fix that. So there was a fix put in label that causes that extra scaling in Blinka Display.io to not happen anymore. So they fixed it on the regular label, and then Kmatch came along and fixed it, applied the same fix on the bitmap label. And I reviewed both of those, and I got them both merged, and I went to make a release for it, and I'll show you what my facepalm here is that when I made the releases, I accidentally put the wrong number. I put 1.12.3 when it was really supposed to be 2.12.3. So I just was going a little bit too quick and I put the wrong number in there. And what that caused it to happen was in PyPy, it must automatically look for the highest version number. So it assumed that this 2.12.2 was still the newest version. Because this 1.12.3 was lower and therefore older, it thought. So I tried to fix it this morning. I made a 2.12.3. It still didn't end up fixing it. The one that got uploaded to PyPy was still not the right version. So I made one quick change, just fixing a small typo I found real fast on a hunch that that's what it needed. Was it needed a new commit basically in order to recognize the difference. So I fixed a small typo. I made another release, and now everything is all good. So that's my display text story for the day. And hopefully what you can do is, if you ever get to the point of releasing things on GitHub, you can learn from my mistake here. Double, triple, quadruple check your tag number before you hit submit, because that was what I did there. But these two changes were actually awesome, and I went to install them from PyPy this morning and noticed that I got the wrong version, so that sent me down the trail of fixing that. And that's what Ask Patrick W was asking about. Okay, wrapping it back around, let's close off some of these tabs. Let me go grab the code for this library. So I think I have it open. Yeah, CircuitPython display layouts. I have it open here, so I'm going to go ahead and just copy in all of the stuff I have. And it's definitely going to fail actions really, really badly because I don't have licenses on anything that needs licenses. But we got to start somewhere. So I'm going to paste in all the examples, which includes it includes all the layout files. It also includes all the code that actually, reads those layout files and use them. And it also includes a couple images that are used in some of the examples. And then there's also a directory that includes some screenshots, because one of these example codes will like render a layout and then take a screenshot of it and save it as a BMP file, so that way I can like look back after the fact and see if it looks different or wrong or broken or anything. So there's a screenshots folder where those end up. So that was the examples. Let me also pull in the actual library code, which in my case it's going to be a module, not just a single file. Maybe I said that wrong. It's going to be a package instead of a module, maybe. So I don't want to just end up having foamyguy displayio inflator.py. I want to have a folder, and then I'll put that inside of it, or it'll have differently named things inside of it. I want a Python package, foamyguy displayio inflator. That just went inside of examples. Oh no, it didn't. Okay. It got init automatically, which is good. We want that. We can delete this py file because we are not going to end up using it. Although I guess one thing I'll do is I could keep it and I could grab this boilerplate, because I'm sure a bunch of my other files don't have that in it yet. Okay, so let's grab the rest of the code. So it's broken down into 3 py files and then one other package, which is the views package, which has a bunch of py files in it. Basically it has one for each type of widget, although this is from a while ago, and I still was using the view terminology, which again I kind of just lifted that from my Android days. So one thing I might do is come through and refactor a lot of this, so that stuff like this one here, you can see it says view type. I might end up changing that over to like widget type, for instance. For now though, I'm just trying to copy it into the library, get it all in there and pushed, and that's the main thing I'm focused on today. So I'm going to copy all of that. We're going to put it into the newly generated library here, inside that package. Paste. That didn't paste anything. Copy. And paste. Interesting. Okay. I don't know why that copy paste is not working, but we can just go here. We don't need PyCache, I don't think. That'll get generated automatically or something. Let's try it this way. I'll copy them. There, we'll paste them. There we go. Okay, so now views is in there, and the other 3 files I had, which so far the only ones I had were absolute layout, and then linear layout, and then I had one called layout exceptions, which just holds some different exception types related to rendering the layouts. So let's try out some of the examples. We'll start with the simple test. So, well, yeah, this one is empty right now. That's because the name is a little bit different. I had this file here, display layout simple test. We could probably just rename that, honestly. Or you know what I'll do is I'll just copy it from here and put it in this one. So you always want to make sure to have an example that is the same name as the library and it has simple test in it, because that is where people are supposed to go to learn how to use the library. So we want to make sure to always have that one. So I just copy pasted the code. I had already written it, but you know, again, I changed the name of this library, so that's why the name is different there. So I copy pasted that in. I'm just going to delete the one with the old name. And then I'm just going to fix the import because of the way I changed the name. We're going to have to update the imports. So this would say from foamyguy display.io inflator dot absolute layout, import absolute layout, and then it's going to read simpletest.json from inside of the layouts folder here. It's going to get it as a string. It's going to pass it into the absolute layout constructor right there. One thing is this code is written for board.display. I do have copies of all of these that run with the Pygame display, so I'll actually go ahead and run those first here. So simple test, I'll rename that one as well. Is it, I think it's Shift F6. Yeah. Display IO inflator. Simple test, and we'll have to fix the imports. Maybe I'll automate fixing these. There's going to be a lot of them to do. From foamyguy, there we go. I'm pretty sure whenever we get to the point of running pylint, it's going to be mad about having those things before OS, so I'm going to switch the order of those now. Okay, yeah, that looks good. Let's go ahead and run this one. Nope. No module name display layouts. Oh, so yeah, I guess part of the thing is that inside of the library, a bunch of the imports are going to have to change as well. So why don't we do a find replace here? So this is one of the really nice things about PyCharm is when you want to refactor something, you know, it can be a lot of work to rename. Even if you copy paste, like, it's still a lot of things to copy paste. So they have really nice refactoring and replacing tools in here. So I can say I want to replace display layouts with display.io inflator, and I can go one at a time, or I can do them all at once. I think I'll just do them all at once. And of course I messed that up because it's supposed to be foamyguy display.io inflator. So now we're going to search for the thing we changed it to. Fix it to the right thing. There we go. So now all of those are happy. We're going to have to do this in some other files, I bet, too. This one is back to layouts, though. Place all, there we go. Okay. This one has no imports. Views, I think views probably won't. Nope, I was wrong. Views imports the, okay, it imports the base view object, and then it also imports all the layout exceptions. So we'll replace that, and this is going to have to get done in all these files, so I'm going to run through and do it real quick here so that we can actually run the samples and stuff. But, you know, you can see how, like, this is kind of tedious even with PyCharm. You can imagine if I didn't have the find replace stuff. Here we go, a couple more. So you can see here I basically have one, you know, class for each of the what I'll call widgets. It gets even more convoluted now though, because we have a class that we're actually calling widget, and so things are going to subclass that. And so that's not necessarily what I mean when I say widget here. I just mean like it has one class for every display.io thing that you could draw previously, so that way it knows how to read the right all the right properties for that thing. Because everything has different properties, right? Like a progress bar has some properties that are the same as a label, but it has other properties that are way different. Like progress color and whatever. Like none of the other things have that stuff. So each one kind of needs to know a little bit about the type of object that it is, so that it can read the right parameters and put them in. Got the sparkline. This was I think Kmatch made sparkline originally, if I recall correctly. Triangle. I did replace one instead of all in that one. Here we go, almost done. View, this is the base view. Okay, I think I got them all now. Let's close a bunch of these, and let's retry that example. Getting off screen there a little bit. Let's see. What's the chat say? Of course, now I'm over in CircuitPython. Sorry. Never can remember the order of all this stuff. How's it going, Jay Forseen? I may have gone over this, but are you supposed to have your GitHub name in the library? Why is that? I'd say it's optional. So for Adafruit libraries, which you kind of have to remember, this cookie cutter tool that I used, its primary purpose is for Adafruit libraries. It's for the CircuitPython, the people who work on CircuitPython to be able to create new libraries as Adafruit has new products and things. So that's its primary purpose. And all of those Adafruit supported libraries, those all do have Adafruit at the beginning. That's just a rule that they choose to follow. It's not like a rule of GitHub or a rule of anything larger. It's just a thing that they want to follow to keep all their repos identifiable, basically. I assume that's why. I don't actually know the reason why, but that's what they choose to do. And then for me, I think it makes sense to kind of just follow the lead there. It's nice to include the name in there. That way, when a person has like, if you were to install this via not from pip, like if you were to install it by copying the MPY file out of the community bundle, for instance, including the username there in the name of the library will make it so that the username shows up in the bundle. So that way, people would know where it came from if you want them to. So that's why I do it. And then the other reason is just because the cookie cutter puts Adafruit in there by default. Now you saw how it's got the two different choices. We can choose community bundle, and then we can tell it what we want to put there. It used to be it would just stick that on there automatically, the Adafruit, and you'd have to go back and change it. So that was just one of the things I was used to doing. But yeah, not a specific rule, just a kind of a thing we go by, just for the sake of it, really, just to keep it uniform if we can. Yeah, rubber ducking for sure. I need to get, I've been thinking about getting a real rubber duck. I don't have one yet. That'd be cool though. Okay, where are we at here? Let's run the simple test. Okay, we got a window that time, so that's good. Perfect. Okay, so this looks weird, right? This is like, okay, there's some weird red patchy colored things and a tiny little text there. It's not very impressive. But it is the simple test, and it does show you how to use the library. So this is what the display, this is what the GUI ends up looking like in the simple test. So let's look at two things. Let's look at the Python code and the JSON that created this. And we won't look at too many more of these. Maybe I'll look at one or two more just because I want to show some folks how this library works and see if anyone's interested in using it or has any ideas for ways to make it better. So I won't go through every single one of these, but I'll show a couple of them. We'll start with this one. So simple test really is the most basic example. when you want to go and load a, well, what I should say is when you want to go and inflate a layout, again, I'll refactor this to probably use like an inflate function or something, and I don't know if we'll keep the layout object like absolute layout here or not. Maybe we'll use ones that are inside the layouts library. So I'm not sure how we'll end up, but the overarching idea will stay the same. Whenever you want to load a layout, you open up the JSON file that it's in. If it's in a JSON file, it really doesn't matter where you get your JSON. That's another cool thing about this is if we get people to adopt this, sort of layout language that is JSON, I'm feeding it from these files here that I would store on the CircuitPython drive, but there's no rule that says it has to come from there, right? It could come from the internet. So we would actually get like a sort of simplified kind of sort of browser language type thing, right? Like we would have a markup language that we could define a page in, and then you could point like a PyPortal or something like that to the page. It's going to load up this JSON, and then render it into display.io there. It's kind of serving the same role as like HTML and CSS if you use it from a server like that. But in my case, I'm going to read it from a file. I'm going to get the string out of it right there. And then we just have to pass that into the constructor. So we tell it, in this case, the type of layout we want to do. Absolute layout is the most basic. It just lets you define standard positioning for everything. So you can use X and Y coordinates or anchor point and anchor position on the text label. Although eventually we'll be able to do that with everything, I think. Or maybe you can do it with a couple other things. I might have built that in. We'll take a look here in a minute. But you pass in the layout string right there. You pass in the display that you want to ultimately render it on. And I'll talk about why it needs that part in a minute. But you give it the layout string, and then the only other thing you have to do is, basically you end up with a main layout. It has a view property right here, which is essentially the display.io group that is going to represent all the stuff that was inside of your layout JSON there. So once you have that group, you can do with it the same thing you can do with any display.io group. So you could add it to another group that's already on the display, or you could just call display.show and pass it in. And so the only other thing that this simple test does is it shows you how you would look up views. Again, I'm using that term view. Eventually we'll probably change that up, but it tells you how to, or it shows you how to look up, I'll call them individual elements from your page in order to get a reference to them so that you can make changes. So in this case, it's saying main layout dot subview by ID. So we want to look up a subview or look up an element. We want to look it up by its ID. The ID we want to find right here is main_label. And then once we find that element, the thing we want to do is get the label property from it and then set the text property right there. So .text equals, and then we just changed it here. It says changed by text ID, and then it just is the while true loop there to run. And again, here's what it ends up looking like. So you can see this blue text right here is the one that I changed there. And let's look in the JSON next. So this is the JSON that leads again to this window. I'll scoot that over. Let's see if we can do side by side. I don't know if it will work out very well. That's pretty good. Okay, so let's take a look through the layout. You can see at the top there, it tells it what kind of layout it is. So pretty much all these objects will have a view type. Again, probably going to end up changing the name. So if you're watching this now and you want to use this library, this is what it is today. But some of the names of stuff will probably change. But we tell it the type there. It's an absolute layout, and then it contains a list of all of the subviews or all the elements that are going to go inside of this layout. So it's a list with square brackets there, and then each one of these things is an element. So again, it uses view type to tell it what type of element. So this one is a label, and that just matches up to a regular old display text label. There's the ID, so that's the ID that we were able to look it up with from the Python code back here. So like we said, subview by ID main label. That matched up and found the element that has main label here in our, what I'll call a DOM kind of thing, basically, but obviously it's JSON code. Yep, how's it going, Ask Patrick W? Attributes. So attributes, each one of these objects then gets another sub-object that has the attributes. And so attributes are basically all the properties that are used to define kind of like how it's going to look or what kind of stuff is going to be in it. Essentially, these are all of the constructor arguments and other properties that you're allowed to change on those display.io objects. So the label has got, you know, anchored point and anchored position. It has a color. It has a text value. It has a max glyphs. So all of the same properties and arguments that you're used to using just on the label itself, you can define from the JSON code here. So we have an anchored position. And then this part, this is actually really one of the coolest things about this library, at least in my opinion, is when you are declaring some of these attributes, you can make use of a few different variables. You can make use of the display width variable, and you don't have to know what the display width is at the time you write the layout. So that is actually why I said I would come back and talk about why we had to pass in the display. That's the reason why right there. We pass in the display whenever we create this layout, because it allows us to do super neat stuff like this. So inside of our layout, we can just say, I want this thing to be at, you know, the midway point, essentially is what this is saying, right? Display width divided by 2, or, you know, 1/8 up the page or 1/8 down the page maybe. This one is saying the height divided by 8. So, you know, if it runs on a PyPortal, right, that's a certain size of screen, and this is going to make it go to the middle of that size of screen. If we run it here in my Pygame display, this is a different size screen, but it still ends up in the middle because of the way our layout is able to make use of these variables like this. So this is really awesome. This is actually one of the things, again, that I think is probably one of the biggest benefits about this layout inflator library, is because we can define our layout once and then have it rendered on different screens and still have things come through the same way. So like, you know, if we were just writing Python code for this, we would have to care about the different screens a little bit more, whereas here we just say we want half the display width and I don't have to worry about the actual numbers. You can also do math inside of these, right? So the way I did display width divided by 2, you can do other math as well. So you could, you know, if you wanted to add a little bit more margin or something, right, like you can just add to that as well, and it will go through and parse that whole equation and solve it for you and then fill it into this value. So this one is setting anchored position right there. We've got a color, we've got our anchor point. So the initial text that we start this table, this label with right there is just the number 1 there. But obviously you can see by the time it runs, it's, you know, changed. It says change text by ID because that's what our Python code back here did. So that's just showing that it started out as one thing, but we were able to look up a reference and change it. There's our max glyphs. So if you're used to using the display text label, you'll know that, you know, you have to use max glyphs to tell it how many different characters are going to be in your label. We got a background color there, and then a line spacing as well. So display text label, again, these are all just parameters of display text label. Next one here is an image, and there's actually 2 different kinds of image. This one is view type image, and the other one down here is view type on disk bitmap. And so those are just 2 different ways of rendering images with CircuitPython. One of them loads the image into memory using the Adafruit image load library. So that's what this one is. So running through the properties here real quick, we got the view type, of course. We have the ID there. This one we call main image. Of course, we have our attributes. The image file, we tell it what image we want to load. This one is in the images directory. It's called 2bit.bmp. Give it an XY coordinates right here. Again, we can use those variables. So this one says display width over 2, and then it also goes minus a width of over 2, a width divided by 2. So you can get the display width by putting display width there. You can also get the width of this particular element by just using width there. So you know, what this equation right here will do is center this image. So if we switch back to here, this red, you know, color patches thing down here, it got moved to the center of the screen horizontally there based on this equation, because it said half of the width of the screen minus half of the width of the element. Just hard-coded the y value there. And then this is an interesting thing that I added to the library. I don't know if this is the best place for it or not, but I was working on this and I thought it would be a neat thing to add, so I did. So we have an ability to add padding and background color here. These two things, those do not exist on the image load library. So this is kind of, I went above and beyond and defined these two things even though they're not a part of the image load library. And what it does is it, if you're used to building layouts, GUIs on different platforms, you probably recognize these. Padding is the space inside of something, inside of an element. And then background color, I added there like that gray color of all 7. So if you look at these images, the red square is actually the only part that is the BMP file. The gray that's around that is getting drawn by this, because I said padding 16 and I set a background color there, so it filled in that gray backdrop for me. So this is kind of cool if you want to add a border around your image of a certain color without having to actually build another bitmap or something and add it to the group. You could do it all, but you just have to micromanage it kind of. This lets you just declare a couple arguments there, a couple attributes, and then you don't have to mess with it beyond that. You just get a free background and padding there. Same kind of thing going on with the bitmap, the on-disk bitmap. The main difference is, of course, under the hood. On-disk bitmap, it's not loaded into memory. It just goes straight from the disk into the screen. I guess screen buffer or something like that. It just goes straight into there. It doesn't go through memory, so you can't really change things in it. You can't just go grab a pixel and change it to a different color or something like that, which you could on the image load one. So same kind of stuff here though. We have an ID, we got our attributes, tell it what file we want to use. Again, we can make use of these variables here. So this one says display width minus width. So what that's going to do is put it all the way on the right side of the screen. So it's going to scoot it all the way over to the display width and then subtract it back the width of the element. And you can see there that that's working. So it pushed this image all the way to the right edge of the screen. Just hard-coded the Y there to 70, and then I did the same thing. So padding a 16 and a background color there. Okay, so that's kind of the most basic example. It shows you how to do images, shows you how to do texts, and it shows off kind of the main highlight feature of this, which is this idea of filling in these variables for the various different positions and things. So display width and width, being able to do large equations like this and just put all your math right inside of here without having to write the Python code. That's one of the main upsides of this library. So that's that one. Let me look at one more maybe. Again, I don't want to go through too many of these. I do want to move on. But maybe let's look at one more. What would be a good one? Let me do linear layout test. While we're here, I'll rename it. I'm not going to rename all of these because that might be kind of tedious, but I will do this one. Display.io inflator linear layout test. And I probably need to fix the import there. Okay, so you can see here the Python code is basically the exact same. The only difference is really there's no part after it that's looking up the text and changing the value, like looking up the label and changing the text in it. We don't have that part, but pretty much other than that, the code is exactly the same. We load up our JSON layout there. We pass it into our in this case we pass it to our linear layout. So let's run this and see what it looks like. Run that. I'll close the first one back here. So there you go. This one you can see it's got quite a bit more things, and you can start to get an idea of how this is helpful when you're writing code, right? Because this example has way more things in it, right? It's got 3 text, it's got a button, it's got 2 images, and it's got a progress bar, whereas the previous one, it just had a single text and 2 images, and that was it. This one's got way more things, but the amount of Python code that it uses is pretty much the same. So you don't have to dedicate space in your Python code to do stuff like this arithmetic to get stuff positioned where you want, you know, big long lists of constructors that are passing in all these arguments and stuff. Like, it tends to be a fair amount of boilerplate code when you put all that GUI setup and positioning stuff in your Python. So I think it's nice like this. You throw it off in a side file over there, kind of like the split between, you know, HTML and CSS and JavaScript. Essentially, you put your visual stuff in one place, you put your kind of logic stuff in one place, and you try as best you can to keep them separate. That way, it's not all intermixed. You don't have to go digging through the logic whenever you just want to move a label somewhere. You don't have to go digging through all the label positions when you want to update the, you know, the business logic to do something different. So again, looking at the example though, you can see the cool thing about this one is linear layout. It will line all these things up in a either horizontal or vertical line. So this one is vertical. If we look in the JSON for it here, linear layout test, we can get some room. So, you know, as a high level thing, it works pretty much the same way. We just declare the type of layout here at the top. It's going to be a linear layout. We can put attributes on the layout itself. So in the previous example, we didn't have any attributes on the layout itself, but this one we do. So we gave it a X and Y. So that scooted it down and over a little bit there. Then we have our list of subviews, and that one is a list. And in this case, it's basically going to take those subviews in the order they appear in this JSON file and render them out onto the screen. And it will make sure to put the next one down below the previous one. So you don't have to worry about saying, you know, like, I want the Y value to be, you know, add the height of the previous one or whatever. You don't have to keep track of all that stuff and micromanage it. You just put them in the order you want them inside of this subview list right here. It will take care of laying them out on the screen in that same order. So running through the attributes here, we got a label, gave it an ID if we wanted to look it up. In this case, we gave it an X and a Y, but those are not absolute coordinate X and Y. When they're inside of a linear layout, they get recognized as sort of like a offset X and Y. So well, I guess the X is more absolute. The X is 10 pixels in from the side, but then the Y, it's actually relative to the thing above it. So when we say Y is 10 pixels here, in this case, inside of a linear layout, that means 10 pixels below the thing that is above it. This happens to be the first one, which means it will kind of end up at 10 pixel Y, or maybe 50 because of the 40 up here. But the next one here, you can see Y0. That's not going to be literal Y0 of the whole page. It's going to be 0 pixels below the thing above it. So no space in between the thing above it, basically. So that's the X and Y when we're inside of a linear layout. I think pretty much everything else is the same. So, you know, color, text, that all works the same. Max glyph, padding, background color, all that stuff works the same. Here's our second label here. One thing you can see is I was copy pasting, and I do have two things with the same ID. I should not do that. This one should be different. This one should be second label or something. Attributes, see if there's anything else interesting in here. So X and Y I talked about, color, text, max glyphs, padding, that's all the same. So this is a third label. Again, I just copy pasted and should not have done that. Let's fix it while we're here. So adding a 4 pixel margin there between the second label and the third label by having Y4 here. Color, text, max glyphs, padding, background, that's all the same. Here's our button. So, you know, same kind of thing. I don't think we've seen a button yet, but it works the exact same way. You just declare the attributes that you want to get passed to the constructor. So, you know, buttons have a style, buttons have a label color, buttons have a fill color, an outline color, a height and a width, all this stuff. So we just include those as attributes. Again, X and Y work the same, so that's just saying 4 pixels of margin between that button and the thing above it. Moving on, we got an image. This works the exact same way as the image we saw on the previous one. It's got an ID if we want to look it up. There's the file it's pointed to. Padding and background, that's all the same. Here's a progress bar. We hadn't seen that one yet, so we saw it on the screen, but we haven't seen the JSON for it yet. It's here. Give it an ID, give it an X and Y, that works the same. We can use those variables when declaring the width as well. So we say here we want it to be the full display width minus 20 pixels. So that's a cool way of being able to size our view, size our widget, our element, relative to the size of the display, which is nice. 30 pixels tall. It's got a bar color, a stroke, an outline color, and then a progress. Those are all, specific to the progress bar. Can buttons have image backgrounds, or can images be buttons? Not right now, not exactly. You could do it, like there's nothing stopping you from writing a little bit of code to do it. Really the thing that I would encourage for that, and the thing that will give us the ability to do that, is actually inside this library right here, display.io layout. And it is the thing that Kmatch is working on, which are these two, let's just go here and we'll look at all the code. These two superclasses inside widgets, there's one called control. I think that's the one we want. Yes, control class for responsive elements. So this class control has a function called contains. You pass it a touch point and it will tell you true or false if the point you pass it is inside the bounds of this element. So the idea is anytime we want to make a clickable widget, we will have it extend this control class here. So what you could do today is you could grab this code. This is not merged into the library yet, so you'd have to grab it from Kmatch's branch here. Eventually this will make its way into the library for sure though. But what you could do is you could make your own subclass. Like you could either subclass on-disk bitmap, or you could subclass regular just bitmap by itself, or group or something if you wanted. Also subclass control, put your image inside of that thing, and then because you're subclassing control, you will get this contains function right here, which this is the exact same function that the button class uses. We took this contains pretty much straight off of the button. So when all the rest of this stuff is built up, we will have the ability to create a clickable image super easily, because we'll come back and we'll make an image that extends control. But for right now today, the existing ones, the image load and the on-disk bitmap, those two specifically, they don't have that contains today, so you'd have to kind of write a little bit of code to add that contains into it. The easiest way would be to grab this control that's in the works and subclass it. Okay, where were we at here? Yeah, for sure. Thanks for great question, by the way. Thank you for the question. Yeah, and I should mention, I don't think I mentioned it specifically, but definitely, feel free to shout out questions in the chat room here. I also don't think I mentioned it, but I think most of the folks know I'm in the Adafruit Discord, so adafru.it/discord, and then we're in the live broadcast room. Hey Hugo, how's it going? Doing pretty good myself. Alright, let's look back in the code. I think that's probably all that we will look at for now in this, what I'm now calling the displayio inflator library. So I have some refactoring and some different work to do to get this thing up to the current standards, and I definitely want to go back and try to get rid of the idea of using this term view. And so I'll do all of that stuff on my own time. Going good. Get here 1.5 hours. yeah, 1.5. I still got a fair amount of stuff to do. Oh, I think on that topic, actually, I found a setting, and I'm pretty sure that my videos on Twitch will show up now. I don't know how many folks. I think more folks probably watch through YouTube than Twitch, but if anybody is watching on Twitch, I think it will save the videos there now, at least for a little while. It was previously only showing them when they were live, but I think I figured that out. And actually, the other kind of sort of housekeeping thing that I meant to mention is I figured out how to switch the name on my YouTube. So my YouTube used to be Zob Rombi, which was, it's like Rob Zombie. I was a fan of Rob Zombie. That's what that name came from. it is now foamyguy though, so I managed to figure out a spot where I could go and change it, and so now my YouTube name does come across as foamyguy as well, so it matches the rest of the stuff, so that was nice. Anyway though, back to this. I think, yeah, I don't, is there any other, I don't think there's any other that are particularly interesting. The rest of them work pretty much the same way. Sparkline, maybe, that's kind of an interesting one. So you create the sparkline, and then you can give it a list of initial points if you want, but you can also give it an ID and then look it up by its ID right there, and then keep adding more values to it. So that one's kind of fun. If we run that, we're gonna have to fix the fix these guys here. Yep, foamyguy Twitch. Yep. So somebody else. Thank you for that link, Hugo. So somebody else has foamyguy on Twitch. Somebody who did something with Minecraft or something. I was really late to the Twitch game. I've been using the name foamyguy in different places for a long time. I created that back when I was like probably 14 or 15 or 16, something like that. So I've been using it for a long time, but I'm very, very new to the Twitch game, and somebody else got it on there. I don't think they're active. I thought about asking them if they want to give it up, but that seems kind of weird, right? To just come out of the blue and say, hey, can I have your name? I don't know. That seems weird. I probably won't do it, but... so I am on Twitch. I'm foamyguy_Twitch, and that's the reason why. It's just because somebody else got it before me. What do we want to do? Fix the layouts. Foamyguy. Let's run this one, and then we'll move on after this. So here's the sparkline. You can see how it started with the initial points, but then it does just keep adding new points to it there. So that one's kind of cool as well. All right, let me push this. It is gonna get wrecked by actions, I'm sure, but that's all right. I need to create a repository and do some other stuff. So yes, I have created a local copy of this code, but it's not linked up to GitHub yet. So what I need to do is come to GitHub. We need to create a repository, a new repository. Is there anything before I do this? There's nothing that's like private that I need to type here, is there? I don't think so. Okay. Yeah, I think that's fine. I'm pretty sure I can do this on camera. I should be okay. The name of the repository, I do want to make sure that that matches what got generated. So let me go look in my code. And I think, where does that get put? Here's one spot where it's at. So we want to make sure to use this exact name right here. It wouldn't be that big of a deal if we changed it. We would just have to come and find wherever this is at in our files. We'd want to change it there because this stuff is supposed to match up. So I'll copy it from here and we'll name our repo that. Of course, this just came from all the prompts in Cookie Cutter. Okay, tells me that the name is available. Description, I'll go ahead and put a quick description in there. Let's go parse JSON layout files into display.io objects to show on the screen. I guess maybe we could add CircuitPython library to parse layout files into display objects to show on the screen. Okay, I think this is like that. It's capital C, capital P. We do want it to be public. I do not want to do any of these things. So this gives me the options to add a README or a gitignore or a license file. I don't want to do that because Cookie Cutter generated all that stuff for me, and I want to make sure to use the ones that I got from Cookie Cutter. So we're gonna, it's hard to tell. These are check marks or bullet points or something. I don't know what it would look like if I clicked one, but I don't want to do one, so I'm gonna leave them off. Create. Let's see here. Considering changing, yeah, I thought about that too. Actually, it'd be funny to change your name object. It's okay to ask. I bet we could create a repo to cookie cutter in the post-gen hook. Add a create repo. Oh, create. Oh, that would be sweet. If it could create onto GitHub, I guess, using the API or something, that would be awesome. Or a print statement. Yeah. You know, Dylan, maybe? I don't know if it was Dylan or if Summersoft wrote these or somebody. I'm not sure who wrote the scripts. I've seen some scripts, though, before that they put a big long GitHub URL. They print that out for you, and you can copy paste that URL into the browser, and it like pre-fills a page with a bunch of stuff. The way I saw it was for releases. You would copy paste that URL, and it would like generate an entire new release for you. So you would basically just change like one or two things and then just hit done. I wonder if there's something like that where it could print like a URL, and then you grab that URL and it goes into the browser and prompts you with all the stuff filled in. I don't know if it works like that for creating a repo. Add an option to use GH commands. Oh yeah, that'd be cool. I have never used it for creating a repo. I should probably learn how to do that. I tend to get, especially with version control, I'm fairly new to version control. At this point, I've been contributing to CircuitPython for a while, and I've gotten a lot better at it than I was. But just on my own, I'm fairly new to version control, and I tend to get stuck in my way. So like, I find the one way that works to do it, and then I just do these exact steps every single time. I never veer, because anytime I do veer too far, then my thing gets all messed up, and I gotta go through merge nightmare and gotta cut forests down with machetes, and it's no good. So I tend to just stick to the exact same thing, but the downside to that is I don't learn all these neat new ways, which would actually probably be easier. So I should do that. I will. The next one, you got me. The next one I create, I'm gonna use the command line tool. This one I created already though, and we do need to run a couple of these commands. So we need to init to make it into a Git repository to create like .git and some of the stuff that goes inside of it. So we'll do that. Git init, and then we need to. So I always do it this way. There's commands here, like you could run these commands that will push the stuff in. One of these I want to copy, which is this one, to add the remote. One thing is though, I will change it to foamyguy instead of origin, because I want to try to be better about doing that. Get remote, add foamyguy. Okay. And then they have two more commands here, like you could run these and it would push everything in. I don't know how it handles git ignore though, and I'm kind of paranoid, especially using PyCharm. PyCharm creates a folder called .idea, which has a bunch of crap in it, and if you migrate that crap to a different computer and try to run it, sometimes it breaks your project and it's a pain to try to fix. So there are rules in the git ignore already, so what I like to do is start by doing git ignore. Git add .git ignore .git ignore. Yes, so we add that by itself, then commit it. And then I'll push that to foamyguy master. I want to go to main. I want to go to main. Does not have any branches here yet. If Factor W is here, you might know the answer to this. What does it actually change if you choose master versus main? I just thought about it. Maybe it only applies if I had already. Well, no, because you can't run git init before cookie cutter. I never thought about the fact before, but if it doesn't have git init run, then it's not a repository yet. So I don't know if it can choose the branch at that point, can it? That's okay though. What I'm going to do is just create one, new branch, main. And that would have made it from master, I think, right? Yeah, there we go. So I can push foamyguy main. Push that. Let's check it out on the page and make sure that it didn't do anything crazy. Perfect. So this does say main. and it's the default branch. Excellent. And it has our getignore in it, which is nice because now we can go git add all, and it will add the rest of the files. Then we can commit them, initial files, and then we can push it, and then we can see the actions explode to a giant fireball, I'm sure. Push. Okay, that is all pushed now with the code and the examples and everything. Again, it's definitely not going to pass actions. I know for a fact I never ran black on it, for one thing. I never did reuse. There's a bunch of things missing licenses, so it's definitely not going to pass the actions, but it is published now, and it's like 80% of the way to actually being proper, which is much closer than it was previously, and I got a chance to show everybody how cookie cutter works and test it out for another time as well. Let's see what AskPatrickW said. There's links in the files that have branch name in them. In the files that have branch name. My local branch is called master. So that's the command I could use to switch my local branch. Yep, thank you, Hugo. Or I could rename it. Yep. I think it's the status links. So like in the this one maybe build CI. So like it's pointing this thing to point at the actions for the main branch instead of the master branch maybe. Yeah, okay. I think that's good enough for that. So hopefully that library is interesting to you. If you're curious about it, you can definitely poke me on GitHub. I'm always going to be happy to talk about it with anybody if you got ideas for how it could be better, or if you try to use it and it messes you up somehow. Ping me and I'll help you out with it for sure. In the README, there's links with the branch name. I see. Okay, next thing I'm going to work on today is this wrapper function. So this is wrapping text by pixels. So we had previously a wrap function that worked by the number of characters, and then Jeff Epler wrote this function that wraps by the number of pixels instead. Pre-commit next week. Yeah, I could show the pre-commit process. That'd be a good one too, actually. I will admit I have not actually got. I have not got a pre-commit. I have pre-commit installed on my computer locally, and I run it by saying like pre-commit run all files, I think, or something like that. I will admit though, one thing I haven't done is actually hook it up to be automatic or whatever. I think there's a way you can get it to just do it whenever you try to commit. I think that's the way it's intended to be used. So. Yeah, I can look into that. I've been meaning to do that as well, and that does sound like a good thing to talk about next week. Because the other thing is, we will want to create a section in this guide. This is the Creating and Sharing a Library Guide, and it was written before we started using pre-commit. So we have a page for black, but black is now kind of run by pre-commit. I think what we want to do is probably have a new page here for pre-commit, and when you go to it, it will tell you like what pre-commit is, it will tell you how to install it, it will tell you what we use it for, we'll point out which files it uses and stuff like that. Yeah, and I need to look into all that stuff so that I can write that guide page, hopefully, and doing it on this stream here will be good. So yeah, I like that idea. Who was that? Jay? Was that John? I think said that originally, maybe. Yeah, John, thank you for that idea. Yeah, let me thumbs up that. We will do that. Tentatively, we will plan to dive into pre-commit a little next week. YAML. I think it does. The cookie cutter, I think, made the file for it. Let's check. Let's check here. Yeah, the cookie cutter did make this pre-commit YAML. And it does have these versions. Although one thing that this does jog my memory on is I do need to go back and add these in display.io layout library, I think. AskPatrickW, I think you pointed that out to me, and we weren't sure yet which one it was. Kattni told me to hold off for a minute, but I think those got merged into cookie cutter, so that's got to be what we want, I think. No, those are... Well, this is K-Match's branch. Maybe mine was different? Yeah, mine was different. This, I will say, this is one of my least favorite things about PyCharm. I love PyCharm, but when you have a file open and then you switch branches, it's like, oh, you want to close whatever you're looking at? And I'm like, no, I was looking at that. Yeah, these, I think we're supposed to have these on specific versions. Yes, it's in the cookie cutter. You could pre-commit. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. Is I have pre-commit installed and I've been running it like that. I didn't do it on this library because I'm kind of afraid of the results, truthfully. But that is what I've been doing anytime I do a library update for a library that's not this one. Could we also add comment? Yeah, I asked about that a little bit ago, Hugo. I think we should try to do that if we can. I don't know very much about Pylint. But if that's possible, I would love to get that to run inside a pre-commit also. That way there would just be basically one command you could run, and then it would do all the checks for you. That would be awesome. So I would definitely like that. I do not know if it is possible, but I would like it. Yeah. You can do it. Okay, Hugo's done it locally. Okay. You know what would be good is make a the weekly meeting. So lots of you guys are probably familiar with the CircuitPython Discord and the CircuitPython project and stuff. So you probably know about the weekly meeting. Just for anybody who might be new, the people who work on the CircuitPython project, we have a weekly meeting. It's usually Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Typically, which is, I'm trying to make sure because it's usually 1 p.m. my time because I'm in Central. So 2 p.m. Eastern is the CircuitPython weekly meeting, and we talk about all kinds of stuff, just get updates from everybody. We do hug reports so everybody can point out all the cool stuff going on. It's a really great time. I would encourage you to check it out if you haven't. And what I would say on this pre-commit Pylint thing is throw a note in the weeds. Put a note in the weeds section for the meeting. It is going to be on Tuesday next week instead of Monday, but I think the doc should be up already. If you don't know actually what I'm talking about, I can show you here on Discord. Yeah, it is. It's during the day, so sometimes I end up with work meetings and stuff, and I don't get to stay. Which is a bummer when it happens, but it's nice. It's a really nice time. I love that we can kind of take a minute to get an update. It kind of gives us like kind of a heartbeat of the project in a way. Like it keeps the drums moving forward. It gets everybody to know what's going on. It gives you reason to like go back and do the stuff that you're trying to do. It keeps everything in the forefront. So I had the Discord open here. I just wanted to show where to find this. So in the CircuitPython Discord, if you click on the pins right here, it's a pinned message, and then every week they'll update this message. So whichever one is at the top should always be the link to the next meeting. And if you click on this link right here, it's going to open you up a Google Docs page right here, which is the meeting notes. And inside the meeting notes is where we put basically all the stuff that we talk about in the meeting. So each person has a section to put hug reports. Each person has a section to put status updates, and then there's a in the weeds section down at the bottom. I'd say throw a note in the weeds section to ask about putting Pylint inside a pre-commit across all the libraries. It will probably be a fair amount of work because we'll have to make a sweep through all the libraries again, which we just did, so I don't know how anxious they will be to do another one of those. I mean, we're going to have to do one at some point anyway, right? Like, it's just kind of the nature of the beast when we have 200 libraries out there. Hey, Mr. Certainly, how's it going in the Twitch chat? Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, object. I have a fix that is kind of excessive, but might work. I'll approach the rest of the team with it because it'll have to tie into the server kind of weirdly, but I have a thought in mind for how to fix that. I'm hoping, though, I'm kind of putting it off, hoping that Discord will just fix it for us since it's their thing, truthfully. Okay, let me go back to here, and then we're going to jump into display text next. Let me pull back up the right channel here. Autobot. Let's see. Can usually catch the first hour, but have a recurring. Yeah. I'll tell you what. If you throw a note in there, Hugo, or whoever wants to, truthfully, if you throw a note in there, and if you're not around at the end, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to pull up my calendar right now, but I think I'm available this week. So if you put it in there, and if you're not able to stick around to the end, I will try to pick up that topic and present it to the rest of the team. Yep, it is recorded. You can catch them after the fact. Been pinging Discord on Twitter. Nice. Yeah, that's a good thought. I don't even. So I went to one of these Discord rooms. Like I went into one of this Discord API room, and I asked about a way to do it with this Python, like PyDiscord thing, and the people in here were like, why would you want to do that? And I was like, well, because I'm trying to make a version of this overlay thing. They're like, well, why don't you just use that one? And I'm like, well, because it's broken and it doesn't show the names. And they're like, well, why don't you just ask Discord to fix it? And I'm like, I don't know who to ask, and I don't think they'll listen to me, and I'm a developer, so I thought I could do it, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. Anyway, let me get back to live broadcast. I thank you for dropping that link. I will ping them as well on Twitter. My whole 12 followers or whatever will, I'm sure, make them quake in their boots, but the more people we can have pointing out to them, the better chance we have it of getting fixed, so I'll definitely do that. Okay, yes, display text. Getting a little distracted. Let's go to display text, and then we'll pull up the issue or the pull request that we're working on. So this is pull request number. Oh, yeah, I was going to show this. I forgot to do it, so I'll talk about this real quick, even though I just said I was going to try not to get distracted. This goes along with that layout, the inflator project. If you are interested in... So, you know, all the examples that I showed were very, very basic, right? They're pretty much just examples. They're just for the sake of showing how that thing works. This project, which I just put a link there in the live chat room if anyone's interested, this is actually a project that's a more fully featured project. So, and it makes use of that layout system. So this was kind of like my own attempt at building out a more full application that makes use of that inflator tool. So it's a timer. It's got 3 different modes. You can go to the different modes, and then within those modes you can do different things. So like quick timer lets you choose like 5 or 10 or 15 minutes. Custom timer lets you set whatever time you want as a timer, and then stopwatch counts up. And the cool thing about this project is that all of those different screens are inside of these JSON layouts, and then of course inside the Python code it just loads them all up the same way that we were seeing before. So it reads the JSON, puts them into a layout, and then whenever it needs to, it will just go and call display.show for whichever layout we're on. So you can see this is a more complex project. You know, I would call it like an application. It's got 4 or 5 different screens. Each one of those screens has got 4 or 5 different labels and things on it, and controls like using the D-pad to select. And you can see here this is all the layout code. So it's about, what is that, about 30 lines of layout code, and it allows you to define like all 4 or 5 of those screens and pull all that stuff out. So it's really nice the way you can get all of that stuff out of your Python code, and that way you leave the rest of your Python code here. Like the vast majority of this file is all just business logic. In this case, it's the state machine that drives the main application. But anyway, I wanted to give a chance to talk about that one just because it's a more full example that shows you how you could use that in like an actual project instead of just a little quick example script. Okay, this is what I'm going to work on next though. It's wrapped by pixels, and Kmatch came by and found some oddities with this, and we would like to try to do them better. So one of them is which the one I'm going to work on first is going to be the easiest, I think, which is that new lines get removed. So let's get set up to work on this. Display text I want to go to the right branch, which is what? foamyguy wrap by pixels. Display text. foamyguy wrap by pixels. I'll pull, I don't think, I mean there shouldn't be anything pushed that's not already in my local copy, but just in case. And then let's get, I think there's probably a test script somewhere already. Yeah, this is it. In fact, this is a test script right here. It's got a big long line of text. It's calling wrap text to pixels right here. I think it's drawing a little box or something that's colored so we can measure it. Group full. This is inside the label. Group full. Update text. Group full. Why would the group be full? Interesting. Pinned face, update string text. I think the problem is, what does this return? This returns lines. This returns lines, which is a list. Lines is a list right here. We need to turn it to a string. We can't set a list onto a display text. This was one of the changes. I had originally put this as a where it would return a string with all the new lines inserted. Lady Yada suggested we do it the other way. Put it as a list instead, which it makes sense. It makes it more reusable for different purposes, basically. So I think what I want to do though is I want to find the commit where I changed it, which is right here, because I'm a copy paster. So what I'm going to do is just copy paste the code I used originally, and now that needs to live inside of the test script instead of inside of where it was before, which is in the wrapping function. So now here where we say wrap text to pixels, maybe what we'll do is create a variable lines equals wrap text to pixels, and then we'll paste that code back into here. Yeah, I think that's the problem, is I just made that change, but I never came back and changed the example script. There we go. So here you can see what this does. It wraps our long text. In this case, it's a paragraph, or I guess it's really only a sentence, I think, sentence or two. And it wraps it down to a certain number of pixels. In this case, I have the red box down there as well, representing the same number of pixels. That way, we can see if it's working or not. If the blue box is bigger than the red box, we know that the wrapping did not work properly. So we always want, when we're running this particular example, we always want the red box to be the same size or bigger than the blue box, because that means our wrapping worked correctly. But specifically what we're looking at is not so much about the size. The size seems to be working okay, but it's what it's doing to some of the characters. So we are going to make a different test string to use here. So text equals, and we're going to make something with a new line in it. So something here on the first. Actually, we're going to make it shorter and just say something new line hello world. And let's run it like this. And it, let's see, it still has the new line. But it's also wrapping at that point anyway. Maybe if we change the wrapping, we might just like coincidentally be at the same size. Let's try bigger. There we go. Okay, this time it does not have the new line anymore, and something about the bounding box is broken. So we set this to anchor point and anchor position 0, 0, so that's top left. Create a bitmap that's that's wrap width wide, 10 pixels tall, 2 colors. TileGrid.y is equal to bounding box 1, which is the label's Y position, plus bounding box 3, which is the label's height. So Y plus height should get us to the bottom of the label. So our tile grid, it should be at the bottom of the label. I'm not sure why it's not, but I don't think it's to do with the particular wrapping function I'm working on. I think that's probably something something to do with label itself, truthfully. Maybe the new line is messing up the bounding box size? What happens if I just scooch this down? Is it drawing all the stuff? Let's duplicate that and just make it static. Let's duplicate that and just make it static. I don't know, 100? Okay. So it does draw the whole text. It's not like it's only drawing half of it. Just the bounding box. Bounding box is off. Maybe it's not accounting for the half height. Maybe this bounding box 1, which is the Y position, maybe that still has the half height getting factored in somehow. I don't know. For now, though, I'm just going to leave this static because that's not really what we're looking at. What we're looking at is the fact that it did get rid of the new line. Like, I put something new line, hello world, and that new line is just gone. Whereas if I had not called wrap, if I had just put the text in by itself, we would still have the new line. So text equals text, comma. If we run it this way, of course we're not using the wrapping function anymore, but we can see that the new line still works fine. So we want it to preserve that new line. We don't want it to get rid of it. I think it's probably best if you're going to use the wrapping function. I probably would recommend you to not have new lines. But at the same time, if you do want to put new lines, I don't think we should just remove them. So I think what we want to do is, I think it will be pretty straightforward to fix this one, which is inside wrap text to pixels, we want to basically find the new line, and anytime we find the new line, we want to just append a new line into our list. We're basically building up this list of all the different lines, and if we find a new line, then all we need to do is just take anything we have so far, put it in our list, and then start a new thing inside of there to start putting new stuff in. So I think there's going to be somewhere inside of this function where we can just be like, if the character is a new line, then append what we have into lines and then move on to the next one. Let's get some printing going on here. Print. Let's start with print word, so that we can see if our new line is a word by itself or if it's part of another word. One thing is, I don't know, I have too many print statements probably. So why don't we be a little more specific on this one? So there we go. So we got 3 words, and none of them contain the new line, it doesn't seem like. So let's look back in this. How's it getting broken? It's calling string.split. Maybe that's going to be our problem, potentially. String.split might be killing the new lines. Let's check the old REPL here. So string is the full string, so something new line hello world split on nothing does get rid of the new line, which this is possibly why we're getting rid of tabs also, although tabs has the other problem of like what character should we use to use it. A couple of folks have mentioned on that issue. I don't think I posted on the issue yet, but I do agree with the ideas that are there so far, which is I think the leading idea is 4 spaces. Replacing the tab with 4 spaces I think is probably the way to go. But that's a different topic as well. So the problem here is that split is not distincting between spaces and new lines. We are going to have to either not use split or find a way where it will tell us the difference here, because like we would have no way of knowing whether we skipped a new line or whether we skipped a space. Basically what's happening is split is splitting this up into different words, what we're calling words, which of course they don't have to be actual like English words in the dictionary. It's just a group of letters with no space in the middle. We're getting words, and it's just giving us the list, whether or not it was broken by a space or it was broken by a new line. We need to find the difference. Send in the argument. Is that an empty space or is that an empty string? Yeah, I think so. Let's try splitting on, I guess it would be space we want, I think. Untype has no shift X. Measure is failing, probably because it has a new line in it though. Let's print the word before we call measure, because if it has a new line here, we can take the new line out before we call measure. Yeah, there we go. So now it has a new line in it. The next thing we need to do is get the new line out of it. We could split the word on new line. If the word doesn't contain any new lines, then we'll just get the plain word back. Is that something? Well, so if it's a word, there'd be no space. If we said split on new line, we just get back the same thing? Well, a list with that as the only thing? That makes sense. How does it work in CPython? Split will split by the default spaces or tabs. Thank you for the docs link. Split. So we could split again on the new line? Would we want to do the new line first or second? We would want to do it second. Or do we split on the new line before we even start and then iterate over the new lines we got? Yeah, Aspector W, that's similar to what we were seeing, is that it's not distincting between the two. New line first so that we don't check every word. So it'd be like for line, well, are we using line? Yeah, let me choose a new name for, I'm gonna say line in input, which is maybe more descriptive than I need to be, but I'd rather be more descriptive than not descriptive enough. For line in input in string.split on new line, then for word in line in input.split space. And that makes sense, though. We still need to deal with the new line. Let me see. What does this print? It said word. Well, but it still has these together. Oh, line and input. I said that, but then I didn't do it. There we go. So now, word, hello, and world. So now the only thing we need to do is actually, it took the new line out for us. We need to insert one artificially. So, let's see. Is it at the beginning here? This is a little bit different than I was imagining. I was thinking like if the current character is new line, but we don't really go over each character, I guess. Let's just for the sake of seeing what's going on, this is going to print line, which is just going to be something as the first line and then hello world as the second line, I think. Let's just validate that, though. Of course, it's not... Is it going to... Yeah, it does get to the second one because it doesn't crash anymore. Yeah, something... and then hello world. So, man, we need, basically the thing we need to do is append a thing into lines. But what do we append? Do we append an empty thing? And do we do it before or after the rest of stuff we're doing? That did not work. It made more space. Now we have 2 rows worth of space, but it didn't actually put them on different rows. So we definitely don't want to do it that way, but maybe if we do it after? This is a sentence with a few new lines. Yeah, that's how we want it to come out for sure. assuming there's enough width. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, that's what we want to get, is so that if you do want to add explicit new lines, that you can do it easily. That's how we want to. So I think if we did it after this inner for loop here, maybe. But maybe we would not want to be appending empty, and instead we'd want to be appending partial. I mean, we're already handling partial. No. Instead of append. Oh man, I feel like it's close. I don't think it's going to be much more difficult than that. I just don't know the right spot to do this. Instead append partial. I'm gonna go fill up my water. I'll be back in just a minute. I'm gonna try to put this on the waiting thing. Okay, and of course this is all different now. Chat window. Darn it, why did this all change? Where's the chat window? See. Okay, but oh, I should not have done that apparently. Sorry guys. Thought this was just quick, switch it to that and then switch it back. No, that's the actual Discord. Okay, note to self, don't do this again. This did not work. It's just not in the list. Okay, you know what? We'll just make a new one. Okay, now we're back. Sorry for that taking forever. Thought that was gonna keep everything how it was, but it doesn't. Added the piece into weeds. decided to already verbally go in the weeds with. Okay, let's see where we're at here. This is back running now, right? Preview, that looks good, okay. So we split on new lines. We are then going to go through each of the lines and do the same thing we used to do, which is split apart by spaces and go measure and do all the stuff to insert different lines. I don't know why, actually, it feels like the end is the correct place, but that didn't work. It feels like after this loop, we should append a blank, because appending a blank line into lines basically is like appending a new line into the final string. Because we do that once for each of the line and inputs. Man, I don't know why I was thinking this was going to be a lot easier to solve, but it seems I was wrong. Let's, I guess, just step through the logic. So the first time line is something, right? Yeah, line is something. We split that by spaces, so we end up with just one word, which is the word something. We want something to end up on the first line. So it's measuring the word something. If the word width is bigger than the max width, which in our case it's not, because we got plenty of room. So this equates to false for us. If it was the first word, append it to partial, set the Boolean first word back to false, add the current word's width into our running total of width. It was the first word in our case. So that's what would happen. So we're not doing else if, we're not doing else. And so then that's going to loop back around. So it does make sense. If we append a blank one here, we have not appended something yet, so this blank one is going to come before something gets appended, which is why we're ending up with a whole blank line here and not something on the top line and then hello world on the one below. I can't wrap my head around doing this with split. What do we got in the chat? Cookie cutter and AdaBots. Yeah, AdaBots. I should look at the AdaBot repo one of these days on the stream. Could fall back to regex, yeah. The library could fall back to regex. I could not I could not probably write the regex to make it work. New line first, so we don't have to check every word. Let's see. Okay, we don't want to append blank. We want to append whatever we have. Whenever we get to a new line, we want to just take anything we've gotten to that point, put it in lines. So we should do more like this. Lines.append partial. But if we just copy paste this, then we're going to be duplicating something, probably. Yeah. Although that's pretty close. So we need to remove it from whatever we're looking at next also. Well, we would need to remove it from partial. So add our partial into the lines, then set partial equals to the indent value, which is blank for us, but if we wanted to use like a tab indentation on the first line, we could do it different. And the word, I think this is where we don't want word, probably. Partial should just be starting with indent when we're here. This is probably going to break when there's not a new line. That's my guess. We're going to get all of this done, and then I'm going to switch it back to the regular paragraph, and it's going to be all broken. Oh well, though, we'll worry about that afterwards. And then measure, we want to measure the indent, and that's it. We don't have a word width to add. So append partial into lines, and then reset partial back to blank, basically. We're using indent in case you want something that's not blank, but in our example it will end up being blank. So that's actually working right. One thing is the space before world, I don't think, I mean before hello, I don't think we want. I guess it depends on how the input is. Yeah, there's no input here though. And I think this is where that space came from. So let's keep running through the logic here. Let me check the chat again real quick. I think the review, so we're talking about, yep. Licensing, yeah, the review and the merges manual, but there are some ways, I think, to generate the PRs and releases. I think can be, it's kind of like halfway automated. You can run a script that does a bunch of it, but there's still, depending on what you're doing, there's still some manual steps. Is this calculating the length at the same time as parsing? Yes, it is. Yeah, it's keeping like a running total. Width is keeping like, that's the running total of the width of all the things, all the words that we've looked at so far. And then word width, W width, that's the width of the specific word that we're looking at right now, this iteration. And then S width, that's space width, that's the width of a single space. and it is doing all that measuring right in line. Like as we're iterating through all these words, it's doing that measuring. It's not like pre-done. It's actually an interesting function. It's called measure, and then it's an inner function inside of here, which I cannot claim to understand, but somehow you call this function and it tells you how many pixels are in the width of the string, if it's all in one line, which is really cool. Okay, let's step through the logic. So run this again. We got something onto its own line. That part's good. The thing we want to fix now is get rid of the space before hello. Get rid of the space before hello. Since hello is the first word of a new line, do we want to set first word back to true? Or is first word only literally the first word of the whole thing? Looks like first word is literally like only the first word of the whole thing, because nothing else in here sets first word back to true, so it's not supposed to indicate that it's the first word of the line. Okay, so we got to here, we appended something, we came back up to here, our next line was hello world, right here, and there's no extra space here. There is a space, but that's just coming from the print format right there, so there's not an extra space there, so we're good at that point. We're going to split that on the space. We're going to get a list containing hello and world, looping over those two items in that list, printing it out. That's looking good still. We still don't have any extra space here. Get the word width of the first word, which is hello. Word parts is empty, cur part is blank. If word width is greater than max, it's not, so false. If first word, it's not, so false. If the current width, which in our case should be 0, or what, it should be only the size of the indent, which in our case indent happens to be blank, so it is 0, but technically it'd be the size of the indent there. I'm just going to say 0 though for now, plus the space width plus the word width. If all those things added up are less than max width, which they are for us because width is 0, space width is whatever, like 6 pixels something, word width is whatever the size of hello is, and all those things together are definitely well under the size of our wrapping, which I think I set it to 170 or something like that. It's the size of the red bar down here. So this is true. We append a space, we append the word, we set the current width to word width and space width. So this is where our extra space is coming from. The question is, how do we change this logic so that it will fix the case that we're looking at here, but not break the cases where we actually need the space? I almost wonder if first word, we almost want to change first word to have it be more like the first word of the line and not just the literal first word of everything. Because if that was true on the first word of the line, then we could always say on the first word of the line you never put a space in front of it. Because this is this the logic we would want? No, it's really not that either, though. Yeah, this is not the logic we want, because that's going to append current partial to lines. That's not what we want to do. We want to, I mean, really, we want this exact same logic. We just want no space if it's the first word of the line. I don't know. Will this work? What if we said for index word in enumerate, splitting this, and then if index is greater than 0, then put a space. That did fix it. Now the question is, does that break anything else? The logic seems right. I mean, index will be 0 only on the first word of the current line in input. Line in input represents a single line, so if index is 0, that's the first word of the line. If it's the first word of the line, we don't want to put a space. If it's any other word, though, index is greater than 0, and we do want to put a space. It seems okay. I can't think of any reason why that would be wrong. Let's go back and try this bigger paragraph and see what happens. It's looking good. So one thing we always want to check testing this is, again, that the label, the blue part in this example script, should be smaller than the red part, which it is. And everything in the label looks good. So let's add some new lines to that paragraph. So maybe if we said, it doesn't really matter where we put them. Let's just go CircuitPython is a programming language, new line designed. So now the thing is, the new line is there, but you can't really tell because it already wrapped at that exact same spot coincidentally anyway. So two things. One thing is I want to test it with two new lines there, but the other thing is I'm just going to test it back over here because at this spot it will not be a place where it's already wrapping. So there we go. CircuitPython is it wrapped because of space. It couldn't fit programming on the first line and still have it fit, so it wrapped because of space, programming, and then it wrapped because of new line. So you can see there's plenty of room. It could have put language there, but it didn't because of the new line, so that's good. Language designed to simplify. All the rest of the lines look good. There's spaces everywhere there needs to be. There's no spaces at the beginning of the lines, which is good. This is looking good to me. One thing I still want to test, though, is doubling up. Like, if you had it this way. Nice. That's looking good, too. CircuitPython is a programming language. We got a whole blank line here because we did two new lines. So first new line gets us down from the line with language. Second new line gets us down to the next one after that, which is the one that starts with designed. We might have done it. Let's see if anybody says anything in the chat. If you know of a reason why this is not good right now, let me know. Fortunately, yep. calculate. Okay, yeah, that's all the same stuff. We'll test some other stuff too here. Let's put this back lower. 70 is good because 70 tests intra-word wrapping, I think. Yeah, like CircuitPython is long enough that it has to get split across lines. So this one, the red line looks messed up again. I hard-coded that red line a little while ago. If you're just tuning in, you might have, you probably missed that, but earlier I had set this just to 100 static Y pixel position. So that's why it's over top of the label right now. This code right here should try to move it to the bottom of the label. That's the intended behavior. We were seeing some weird stuff with it earlier. Let me try switching it back though. Is board's the last word? Yeah. So this one, it's almost like our bounding box size is off by one line-ish. Escape sequences like non-breaking space, yeah, but man, non-breaking space is the bane of my existence. I've fixed more crap that non-breaking space broke. I do not know what it would do. My guess is it would... Well, does Python support -s like that? Let's try it. Let's go 100. The other thing is we do know that tab is still broken, and we don't have the solution to fix tab has to come inside a label. Yeah, I think Python doesn't let you do \s. This one though, I think you can do it like you said second, like ampersand NBSP. I have no idea what CircuitPython will do if you had that in. No, that treated it as a literal also though. I don't know how to insert those things. Non-breaking space. If they wanted to intentionally have, you can you? No, you can't. I guess you're right, because like all those extra ones will get taken out because of the split. No, it worked. You can have extra spaces. I don't know if I understand why it worked. I would have thought... Well, how many things do you get back if you split a string that has two spaces in the middle? Let's call it 3 spaces. Oh, that's why it's working. Because it does, you get back 4 things. Maybe try max split. Max split on what? On the split method? Is that part of Python split? I don't think I have the docs open anymore. I don't like W3 school. Does max split? What does max split do? Number which tells us to split the string into a maximum provided number of times. Do we need that? Depends if you send the argument or not. if you put this to false, then you would not get those empty ones, is what you're saying, I think? Like, if I did it like this. Yeah. Oh. Wait, false doesn't make sense. It wouldn't be false, it would be a number. And false, I guess, is 0 or 1 or something. So if we did 2? What does it do if we do 2? We end up with 3. And the after gets 1 space at the beginning? I'm not sure I understand what... Not sure I understand what that's for. I mean, I can see what it's doing here, I think, but I don't think I understand the situation where you would definitely want to use that for sure. Because I feel like most of the time, like if you take this example, for instance, most of the time when you split, like when I split on a comma here, the rest of my code that comes after this will assume that there's not going to be any commas in those strings. Whereas this makes it so that, I mean, like, how does it decide where to split? It just, I guess it starts on the left and it goes until it has the maximum number. That's got to be it. It starts on the left and it goes until it gets to the... I'm sure it probably says, right? I'm probably like overlooking the paragraph that explains exactly what I'm slowly discovering. Let me do some reading. This is not specified. There's no limit. Circuitive delimiters are not grouped together. They're deemed to be delimit empty strings. The sep argument can consist of multiple characters. Interesting. Okay. Saying if we just ran split, then it wouldn't use... Ah, I see. If we don't pass the space explicitly, then we would not get those extras. I think we want the extras, though. In this case, those extra elements, I think they're allowing... they're allowing this extra space right here to work. So it looks weird, but in the actual string, it looks weird because we added a bunch of extra ones. Ideally, we want to try to keep that. So like there should be a bunch of extra spaces here, whereas if we switch it, I understand the splitting now. It will take them... It will make them so we don't end up with... so that we don't end up with those empty strings in our list, but what that will do at the end of the result is that will mean we don't end up with those spaces, I think. Yeah, because here we don't, all those extra spaces got taken out that way. Oh, I see. Yep, I'm with you. Thank you for helping me kind of work my way through that there. Both of you guys, and for linking the docs, Hugo, as well. Okay, that makes total sense though. I do think we want it to be there so that if anybody puts their own bunch of spaces, they can keep them. We're fixed now on new lines. It seems like new lines are okay. Didn't do super thorough testing, but maybe we'll try out a few more sizes here. And as long as I don't see anything super broken, then I'll call this good and I'll push it. And then I'll probably wrap the stream up there. We're coming up on close to third hour. So let's try a few more sizes. 120 will give us room for another word on the first row, possibly? No. because of the extra spaces, there's not enough room for the word on the front row. Which then makes it so you can't really tell the spaces are there. I guess that's the thing, is like if you do use the spaces, if they happen to fall at the end of the line, then there's no visual indication that they're there. So it's kind of the same thing. I'd probably recommend people not to use them, but if we can try to hang on to them, that's nicer to do for sure. So let's put that back, and let's just load this up with some more new lines to just really make sure this is working. Throw one here, let's throw another double here, and let's also make sure a triple works. I don't know why it wouldn't, but we might not have enough vertical room for all that. Let's see. No, we fit it all. Our red bar is weird, but that's alright. So it's looking good. CircuitPython is 2 new lines, so empty line, a programming language, new line. Designed would have probably fit after language, but we new lined it. Designed to simplify. New line, so we got our blank. Experimenting, and we got 3 new lines, so 2 blank lines. Learning to code on low-cost microcontroller boards, period. And then red is covering up the bottom. That's a different thing we'll want to fix one of these days, but yeah, we got it. I like testing on the stream here. You guys can help me solve the problems for one thing. So once I test it and it's broken, I can fix it quicker because I got help, which is super nice. I think we're good to go here. Maybe, well, we could test. I was gonna say we could test bitmap label versus label. It really makes no difference though, because this function is in init, and all it's doing is taking a string and returning the lines. If you feed those lines to bitmap label versus regular label, that makes no difference really. So we don't necessarily need to test with both. Custom font would be the other thing maybe to test with, which it looks like I got a custom font in there. Let's undo that line real quick. As long as this is looking good, I think we're gonna call this one good. I only got to one of the errors, but one is better than none. And this one was the one I think. This one was the one for sure I wanted to get fixed, so glad. Looks like I took out the comment. Import bitmap font. Adafruit bitmap font. No, I'm doing this wrong. Is it from? I have no idea. You can tell how much copy pasting I do is because I don't actually always know how. It would just be okay. No from, just import. There. No. What? From. Okay. Third time's the charm, right? From here, import this. There we go. No. No, that's okay. We just don't have the font. Arial bold italic. Arial bold italic. Boy, I don't know where I have that. Let me check the PyPortal. This poor PyPortal, the last few weeks I had it up, I showed it at the beginning of the stream, and then I promptly never did anything with it. One of these days I'll focus a lot more on the PyPortal. Display.io, the nice thing about it with the Pygame thing is you can iterate quicker, right? I can iterate just on the PC without ever having to go to the microcontroller, which is nice. Fonts. I got a bunch of fonts in my PyPortal. What was this? It was Arial, Bold, Italic, Complete. I do not have that one though. Okay, let's just use a different one. Arial Bold 24, let's call it. Paste this into here. I don't want to add it to the repo because we don't have a license for it. I have no idea what the license on Arial is. I mean, it's like preloaded on a bunch of computers, so I guess it's maybe open, but fonts are weird. Sometimes fonts are like obscenely expensive to get a license for seemingly no reason. I mean, they want to get paid for making it, and I think they should. It's just sometimes you go and find it, and they're like, oh, you want to use this on your web page? Okay, that'll be $5,000. And you're like, it's just a font. I want to use it on my web page is all. I don't know about Arial. Okay, this is looking good. 24. Let's try that. I think the next problem is it's not in the right folder because this is up one. There we go. So this font is much bigger. So big that it can no longer fit on one screen. I think what I'll do is take a smaller one actually. Why don't we do Arial 12? Cancel, we don't want to add it. Whoops, we want to switch that back to 12 now. Yeah, that's true, Hugo. And then they're counting views and stuff. Saying things out loud helps. Yeah, for sure. Talk to myself. I'm the same way. Talking to myself while I work. Fonts. I think it's not bold on this one. There we go. So it's still a little bit too big to fit. If we wanted to, maybe we could scooch this out a little farther and it would possibly fit on one screen. We don't necessarily care that it doesn't fit either. The main thing we're testing is the wrapping, and the wrapping does appear to be working, even if we don't manage to actually fit it all on one screen, which it looks like we're probably not going to be able to because the spots where we're wrapping language design to, yeah, we're not really, with this view right here, we're not wrapping on size at all, except for the very last line, which is already too low to see. One thing I guess we could do is just make this taller? Maybe? Oops. There we go. That does look fine though. I don't see any glaring problems. It wrapped on size correctly down here. Again, the placement of the red bar is weird, but that's not to do with the wrapping function, I don't think. The blue box is smaller than the red bar. We always want to make sure that's true. Yeah, this looks good to me. I think we're good. This example is not checked in, so my changes to this will not get pushed. Maybe what we'll do, just to be super sure, is I will go ahead and test this one on the PyPortal, which is the example script. The example script that that does run on the PyPortal, just to make sure, because this one is in the repo, whereas my Pygame one is not in the repo. So like at the end of the day, the one that's in the repo needs to be the one that works, even though supposedly like they should work the same and everything. We definitely want to try it out. So save this over code. I'll go to the camera here. Maybe. Looks like I closed the camera. Okay, so first thing is we got an error, no module named, wrap text to pixels. That's probably just because I don't have the latest version of displaytext loaded on my device. And not the latest version actually, but the version I'm doing development on here is what it would need to be. I guess the latest version would have it too, but it wouldn't have the fix we just put in, which is what we want to test. New window, CircuitPy, lib, Gonna delete the old one. There we go. And that is looking good to me. Again, the same logic holds true. We want to make sure the blue box is smaller than the red bar, and it is. So that means our pixel wrapping is working fine. One thing we'll do, since new lines are what we fixed and there are no new lines in this, why don't we just add a couple and make sure that our fix works here as well. We'll just do it right like that. There we go. CircuitPython is on its own line up there. We got an empty space in between. Got no extra spaces on the left. It's looking good to me. Okay, so let's get this pushed. PyCharm Control K will push for you. It will open up this window, which I always like to double check. So this is going to show me all of my changes that I made in this nice side-by-side view here. Ordinarily, it's a little bit better at highlighting the parts that specifically you changed. In this case, we indented a bunch of these lines. Like, all of this code is actually technically almost the exact same. It's just that it's indented. Therefore, it got highlighted as a change because the line changed. So it looks like we changed a lot more than we did. Really, what we did is we added the for loop up here. We changed this to enumerate. We added one extra little if statement on here to check the index, and then we added our stuff down here that appends the current partial. And that's it. We did not touch the other function, which is good. There's nothing highlighted down there. We did not change the behavior in such a way that we would need to document it, although we will want to come back and document some of the other stuff that was mentioned on that PR, but I'm not going to do it right now. For now, I'm just going to push this. So fix new lines getting removed by wrap text to pixels. Control Alt K does commit and push, I think. So in this one, origin is foamyguy. I need to change that over to foamyguy instead of origin, but in this one it is me. Wrap by pixels, that's the name of the branch. There's my commit message. Again, here's my changes. If I wanted to just be absolutely sure, I could double click on that again and see the same little change list there, and that looks good. So we'll push it, and we'll hit the GitHub, and let's just see. One thing I did not do is run pre-commit or pilot, so I might fail the actions. I probably should have done that before. So let's check that out. If it does fail the actions, I'll try to fix it real quick, but I'll wrap up after that. So if it's passing, then I'll call it good now, and if it fails, then I'll try to fix it. So we'll hang out here for just another minute. While that's running, if anybody's got questions or anything, ideas of stuff you want me to cover, anything like that, feel free to share them now in the last few minutes. Otherwise, we'll hang out, we'll see if this passes, and then fix it if it doesn't. My experience, diff tools will ignore the white space when it's not essential. Since white space at the start does really matter to Python. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And it is good about, like, it's got different colors in there. If those lines had actually changed, it would be highlighted slightly differently, which you get used to if you look at those diffs a lot in PyCharm. You get used to the way it's laid out. So it does show you that it is kind of like basically it makes it stand out more when there are actual changes. I don't know how to describe it. It does extra highlighting or something. It's pretty smart about knowing the parts you actually touched. There's like a really nice merge magic wand that you can use whenever you have merge conflicts. It'll like guess at the right way to do it, and it's really good at guessing correctly most of the time. Okay, fingers crossed right here. So we're running pre-commit. It's probably not going to pass. I'm sure something I did, probably black. Black is going to get caught. Oh, it passed. And it passed pilot. Okay, we're probably good then, actually. If we made it past black and pilot, we're probably good. Docs is the last hurdle, but we didn't touch anything that should have messed with the docs, I don't think. While that's running, let me pull up one more thing. If K-Match is still watching, I'm interested to get your thoughts on this K-Match, or anybody else, if anybody who's watching really. It's something we looked at last time. It's on displaytext, and it's this pull request that Jose worked on. K-Match, if you're here, or anybody else, when I ran this last time, the only thing I found that was kind of weird with it was the way that it treated that Fayette font, the real scripty font that's like italics. If you have any ideas on how we could possibly tweak this to make it work with that font better, I'm all ears. But I kind of am coming to the conclusion it might just be like a fact of the matter of like just the way that font is kind of slanted. When you bring the baseline up, it ends up kind of intersecting with the top half of the letter, if that makes any sense. So I showed that, I think it was last week, I don't remember for sure, but I'm curious if anybody's got any ideas for a tweak we could make that would make that different. If not, I'm kind of inclined to say like this is probably good to go. I don't think it's really enough of a drawback to have it look weird with certain fonts, because like it's still a parameter and it defaults to off, so like, you know, the person has to turn it on if they want to use it, and like if they have a font that makes it look weird, they could turn it off, and you can still line it up. It's just not as easy. So I'm inclined to kind of just say, you know, it's a fact of the matter of if you have a font that's kind of slanted like that. I think the slant is what's doing it, that it's just gonna do that. But K-Match has done a lot of work on ascent and descent and inside of display text, so I was curious to see if he's taking a look, and if so, if there's any thoughts on ways we could tweak that. But it does look like this passed, so we are good to go here. So I will still come back and take care of a few of the other things that K-Match mentioned. I only got to one of them today, but I do want to handle the others. Like this one, it puts an extra empty space at the beginning. We want to get rid of that if it's still an issue. Maybe the way we did index might have actually fixed this. I didn't test it, but that might have gotten fixed the way we're checking index now. And the other one, which we won't change, I don't think, but we do want to document, is that a leading space does get deleted, and a trailing space as well. But you can use the indent. There's like indent 0 and indent 1. You can use those to add back leading spaces on the lines if you want to. So for that one, I just want to document it to say like, hey, they're going to get removed, but if you want to use them, the leading ones especially, you can use these indent parameters. So I'll take care of those at some point, maybe later tonight or tomorrow. And then after that, I think this one will be ready to go. K-Match, if you are watching, if you want to give this another once over after I get that done, of course, that'd be awesome. Yep, thank you, John. Thanks for tuning in. Hugo might be down to how the font is made, but from what I can recall, it looked decent. Yeah, it looked pretty good on most everything I did, and on the Fayette one, you can still read it. It just like it overlapped the bottom half of the next letter with the top half of the current letter or something like that. I should pull it up, but something weird looking. But it looked good enough that you can still use it is the other thing. Like it's not like you can't read it. Just the spacing ends up looking weird. But anyway, oh, let me see what Hugo said for Fayette. If you create two images, the same text and all, but one Fayette and one normal font, and compare the baselines. So basically, try a Fayette font with a different one, a non-Fayette one. Basically, just not an italic one. I think it's the italics doing it, but I'm not sure. So a regular one plus the Fayette one, and see how they compare to each other when you use that baseline parameter. That would be a good experiment to run, for sure. But all right, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back next week at the same time, 10 a.m. Central. Saturdays we'll be hanging out doing the same kind of thing. So if you're interested in this kind of video, check back next week, and in the Discord I'll be there as well. I'll drop links when I start. So same deal, same time, same place next week. And thank you all for tuning in. Is my chat